What if Revan trained Anakin? In the Legends timeline, Revan is a Jedi who fights to protect the galaxy in the Mandalorian Wars before turning to the dark side with his apprentice, Alec, who becomes Darth Malak, and attempting to bring back the ancient Sith Empire. However, on one of our old videos, Cartoon Comic Fan wondered what if instead Revan had been frozen in carbonite and ended up returning to the galaxy to train Anakin. That's what we'll be exploring today. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. Our story begins just after Revan attempts to take down Vitiate alongside Scourge and Surik during the events of the Legends novel Revan. After Revan's attempt to overthrow Vitiate, the Sith Emperor decides that it would be prudent to imprison him in carbonite in order to avoid future challenges to his rule. This is the version of Revan that is tormented by Vitiate, tied to him by the Force, so even when he is frozen in carbonite, he is tormented with dreams of darkness. Hands of dead Sith pull at him from the shadows, attempting to subdue his mind. However, Revan still holds on to some light in his soul. His love for Bastila Shan, along with his dedication to protecting their son, keeps him grounded during these visions, and he holds on to some identity in the light side. For centuries, he's frozen in this state, but his dreams make it feel as though little time is passing at all. While Sidious is exploring the galaxy shortly before the outbreak of the Clone Wars, he stumbles upon the world of Dromund Kaas, which was the capital of the old Sith Empire. On this planet, he not only stumbles upon Darth Millennial's Sith spin-off sect, the Prophets of the Dark Side, but he also comes across Revan's frozen body in an ancient ruins of a giant Sith palace. Sidious recognizes the mask from Jedi and Sith legends, and his stomach drops. Sidious checks Revan's vital signs on the side, and miraculously, he is alive within the carbonite. Perhaps it's a miracle of the Force, or simply a miracle of the technology. The Force wielder that had been thought to have died millennia ago was still among the living. Sidious, believing that he could learn a significant amount from both sides of the Force from Revan, unfreezes him and bows before the ancient master, introducing himself. Revan asks what was going on, and Sidious tells him that he has been released into the future. Revan asks about Bastila Shan, and Sidious reveals that she had passed away many years ago. Revan's heart breaks, and his dark side begins to take over again. A sense of fury overtakes him, and Revan crushes one of the massive Sith statues surrounding him with the simple balling of his fist. Sidious tells him that he can help bring her back, as he had been studying dark side alchemy for some time now, and he knows how to manipulate the midichlorians to create life. He also tells Revan about his plan to forge the galaxy in the image of the Sith, and how it is coming to fruition, and that soon the Sith would once more rule the galaxy, just like in the days of old. Revan tells Sidious that he is no Sith, not anymore, and that he sees both the Jedi and the Sith as an obstacle to achieving his goals. However, he agrees to share knowledge with Sidious in hopes that the powerful Sith will join him one day, helping to further his agenda across the galaxy. Sidious tells Revan that part of his grand plan is seducing a powerful young Jedi to his side and helping him destroy the rest of the Jedi in turn. Revan, who had also freed himself from the dogmatic views of the Jedi Order, and who still believes that they are an obstacle in starting an order of truly liberated Force users, believes that he could use this young Jedi and twist him into the perfect acolyte of his new order. So, Revan agrees to come back to the galaxy with Sidious and help him overthrow the Jedi. Then, Sidious would either join him or die. Secretly, Revan has no intention of staying with Sidious after their shared goal is accomplished, unless Sidious submits to him, which he knows is unlikely. How does this impact the rest of the story? Let's find out. Sidious returns to the galaxy with Revan in his ship, and from there they formulate a plan. Sidious would covertly drop Revan on Coruscant, and they would go their separate ways. From there, Revan would make his way to the Jedi Temple and announce his return, informing them that for years he'd been frozen in carbonite and had been released by a gang of small-scale ravagers that had been poking around on Dromund Kaas. Revan would then let the Jedi know that after finding out he had been released far into the future, He wanted to know about how far his old order had come. Revan agrees to this, and upon reaching the galactic metropolis, he parts ways with Sidious. Sidious returns to his Chancellor's quarters, and Revan makes his way to the Jedi Temple. As soon as Revan arrives on Coruscant, the Jedi can sense his presence. Something ancient has returned, something with great light, yet that harbored incredible darkness as well. Revan's presence is so potent that it brings Yoda out of his deep meditation, and he is struck by the alien feel of whatever this was. When Revan arrives at the gates of the Jedi Temple, many are in awe of him, especially since he still wears his mask. They had heard legends of this man, and they knew his history. The Revan-Kissed, the prodigal knight, traitor, had returned to the galaxy. Once more, he was wearing the Mandalorian mask that he donned as a Sith conqueror. Many who see Revan walking through the streets on his way to the temple believe him to be an actor, or perhaps one of those people who perform historical reenactments that had just gotten off his ship. However, when Revan finally makes his way up the stairs of the Jedi Temple and arrives at the gates, there is already a contingent of Jedi awaiting him. Among this group is Yoda, Mace Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, and other members of the Jedi Council at this time. They greet Revan with caution, still sensing his immense shroud of darkness. The ex-Jedi is friendly, however, and recites the story that he had come up with alongside Sidious about the pirates, and how once he discovered what year he was in, he wanted to see if the Jedi Order had progressed since his attempt to kill Vitiate. The Jedi, while hesitant about accepting someone back into their ranks with as checkered a past as Revan, believed that he could possibly be an asset to them with his knowledge of the Force, and that perhaps he could also become a servant of the light once more, as he had in the days of the Old Republic. Revan senses this Jedi apprehension, and he tells them not to worry about his darkness. He informs them that he's been struggling to understand this new time period, and that he's devastated that everyone he had known and loved were now gone. The Council, not encouraging emotion, doesn't empathize with his struggle, but they sweep it under the rug and tell him that they understand. Revan, though, is still lying in hopes of furthering his own agenda. When the prominent Jedi give their tour to Revan, he is unimpressed with their lack of progress over the centuries. They still live by the same dogmatic principles, and they still force their members to conform to their view of the Force, even though there are so many more aspects to explore. Revan, while frustrated, conceals his agitation from the Jedi, knowing that he must play the long game. In order to finally allow for his ideas to thrive, the Jedi and the Sith both had to go. Sadly, working with both of them was something that needed to be done, at least. As Revan is exploring the temple and listening to the Masters converse, the group bumps into Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is walking through the Jedi Temple with his young Padawan. Yoda greets the pair, and they both bow their heads briefly to show respect towards the Masters. Instantly, Revan can sense the Force prowess in Anakin. This must have been the young man that Sidious had been telling him about earlier. Revan, without consulting the Jedi Masters, pushes them aside and introduces himself to Anakin and Obi-Wan. They're floored, extremely confused by who this individual was. Anakin asks if he was really Revan, the legendary hero of the Mandalorian Wars, and Revan tells him that he is. Anakin is still confused, saying that it was impossible for somebody from thousands of years ago to still be alive today. Revan laughs, patting Anakin on the shoulder, and tells him that the Force works in mysterious ways. Anakin smiles, thanking the Master for his small bit of knowledge, and he continues along on his errands with Obi-Wan. Revan looks back, asking Yoda who the young Jedi was. Yoda tells him that was Anakin Skywalker, and he tells Revan that many believe him to be the chosen one from an ancient Jedi prophecy about someone who would restore balance to the Force. Revan nods, saying that he senses great potential in the young man. Soon, he would mold Anakin into his image. After his tour from the Jedi Masters, Yoda offers him the chance to rejoin the Jedi Order. They even offer Revan a seat on the Jedi Council due to his immense knowledge of both the Force and the ability to provide wisdom from a long-lost era. Revan, seeing this as a natural chance to manipulate the affairs of the Jedi Order from the inside, agrees, but he warns the Council that his views are often seen as unorthodox by other Jedi. The Masters say that they understand, and that is exactly why they're offering him a position on the Council. The next time that Revan meets with Sidious, he informs him of this development. and they continue to plot the demise of both the Jedi and the Republic. Sidious is continuing his manipulation of the Senate and Duke, just like in the movies, and he tells Revan to keep on track to throw off the relative stability of the Jedi Order for the trying times to come. Revan agrees. He is able to conceal his distaste for Sidious with his masterful manipulation of the dark side. The next day, Yoda introduces Revan to the Supreme Chancellor, Palpatine. Instantly, Revan can sense their presence. When the Chancellor speaks, Revan recognizes the voice. It's Sidious himself. So, it was true. The Sith truly had infiltrated the highest ranks of Republic leadership. Palpatine shakes Revan's hand, and Revan senses the darkness boiling inside of the man. He tells Revan that he looks forward to working closely with him in the coming years, and even recites the line that he will watch Revan's career with great interest, just like he said to Anakin all those years ago. Revan nods in turn, and tells him that he feels the same way. Revan couldn't understand how the Jedi had fallen so far as to not even be able to sense this evil man right before their eyes. However, he supposed, as he said to Anakin, the Force worked in mysterious ways. Before the Clone Wars break out, Revan speaks with Anakin frequently. He also talks to Obi-Wan, but Revan is clearly more interested in imparting his knowledge on the young Jedi. Anakin is enamored by the old war hero, starstruck. He eagerly soaks up all of the teachings that Revan imparts on him, and he even spars with him in order to improve his dueling skills. Anakin starts to grow further apart from Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan begins to become suspicious of Revan's intentions. He can still sense the darkness that emanates from this ancient master, which Revan continues to say is only because of his frustration of becoming accustomed to an entirely new galaxy. Obi-Wan excuses his concerns as simple jealousy. After all, Revan was a hero of the Old Republic. He had helped save the galaxy on multiple occasions. However, in that same breath, him and his apprentice had also attempted to recreate the Sith Empire, and they were responsible for the deaths of billions of citizens. Obi-Wan brings these concerns up with Yoda in private, but they also seem to be under Revan's spell. Yoda says that he had provided them with great insights thus far, and that they had full confidence in him as a master. Still, Obi-Wan remains suspicious. He would watch Revan in the coming years. At the time of the events of Attack of the Clones, Revan has become a respected mentor to Anakin. Many of his teachings are different from the other Jedi. Anakin respects that he seems to not be bound to the same dogma that the rest of the Order is, and he appreciates that Revan actually seems to take the time to listen to many of his concerns. Whenever Anakin speaks to Obi-Wan, it ends up feeling more like a lecture than a conversation. Revan, on the other hand, always seems to have something insightful to say, especially when Anakin confides in him about having darker feelings. Revan could actually understand, and he tells Anakin that sometimes indulging in those emotions was good for the soul. When Anakin tells Obi-Wan about these teachings, Obi-Wan is shocked. He tells Anakin not to trust Revan, and that clearly he doesn't understand the Jedi code. Anakin becomes angry, and in a small fit of rage, he tells Obi-Wan that Revan was a better Jedi than he would ever be. Anakin then storms off, intending to meditate in his room on his own to clear his head. On his way back to his room, though, Anakin runs into Chancellor Palpatine, who had come to visit the Jedi Council in order to speak with them about an urgent matter. They walk together, and Anakin tells Palpatine about how he feels constricted by the Jedi Order. Palpatine silently encourages these emotions, telling Anakin that he also believes that he has more potential than the Jedi recognize. Anakin parts way with Palpatine, thankful that he had friends outside of the isolated sphere the Jedi tried to contain him in. After this, the events of Attack of the Clones play out as they do in the movie. Anakin and Obi-Wan are tasked to protect Padme, and Anakin apologizes for his outburst earlier, which Obi-Wan forgives him for, but is also still a little bit mad about. However, they rebuild their relationship, and they are able to go about as things are normal. Later, they go and engage in their separate missions. While tensions still exist between the pair, they have a brotherly bond, and they respect one another deeply. However, on personal issues, Anakin still feels more comfortable speaking with Revan. So, when he begins to have dreams about his mother suffering while protecting Padme on Naboo, he tells Revan about them. Revan informs Anakin that once, a long time ago, he had also suffered from such dreams. He encourages Anakin to follow the dreams and to not listen to the Council's foolish rhetoric of suppression. When Anakin tells Padme about this, she agrees with Revan, as she tells Anakin that she feels he needs closure on the issue of his mother, and that he shouldn't let the Jedi take that away from him. So, Anakin takes the journey to Tatooine. To his surprise, when he arrives on Tatooine, he finds that Revan has already come to join him. Anakin is shocked, but Revan tells him that he wanted to be there to help him on his journey, and so he made the trek from Coruscant. When Anakin finds Watto, he asks where his mother is. Revan can sense some of Anakin's darker emotions towards Watto beginning to bubble up when they meet him, and he whispers to Anakin that this Toydarian deserved his wrath. Anakin hesitates, wondering what Revan is getting at. Following that, Revan raises his hand and enters Watto's mind, the same technique that Kylo uses in The Force Awakens, and that Maul uses in the Clone Wars. Watto is in clear distress, but Revan quickly finds the answers that Anakin is looking for. Anakin cries out, wondering what Revan was doing, to which Revan responds with the fact that the Jedi tricks don't work on Toydarians. He tells Anakin that the location of his mother is at Klieg's homestead before releasing Watto, who rubs his head and groans. Anakin and Padme share a hesitant look, but they follow Revan. When the group arrives at Klieg Lars's homestead, the same interaction occurs as it does in the movie, and Anakin heads off with Revan to the Tusken Raider camp. Because Anakin leaves for Tatooine earlier than he did in Attack of the Clones, he is able to save his mother from the grasp of the Tuskens. Revan encourages Anakin to indulge in his darker emotions towards this clan, as they had stolen and tortured his mother. Anakin is hesitant, and he tells Revan that again, such actions were against the Jedi Code. Revan, however, responds by saying to Anakin that he needs to unleash the shackles to the Jedi Code and reach his ultimate potential. These Tuskens deserve justice, not mercy, for their actions. Anakin tells Revan that his mother was saved, and that they had come and completed what they had set out to do. He tells Revan that while he doesn't entirely disagree, the needless loss of life was something that he didn't agree with. Revan, however, states that justice wasn't arbitrary loss of life. Following that, due to Anakin's continued hesitation, and at the behest of the remaining portion of vitiate that lingers in his mind, Revan administers his perversion of justice, striking down all of the Tuskens, men, women, and children too. The pair then escape with the injured Shmi Skywalker in tow, and they return to Klieg's homestead. Even though Anakin had saved his mother, Revan still manages to worm his way into Anakin's mind, sowing seeds of doubt in the Jedi Code that Anakin had been following for years. When Anakin's mother wakes up, they share an emotional moment. Anakin tells her that he told her that he'd be back one day, and she lets him know that he's become a man that she's proud of, and to never let go of that hopeful boy inside of him that had wanted to make the galaxy a better place. Anakin hugs her and he tells her that he wouldn't, and he promises to stay true to himself. When Anakin receives a message from Obi-Wan about the Separatists and sees that he's in trouble, Padme still advocates that they go save him. Anakin is skeptical, telling her that he wants her to remain safe. He also wants to stay with his mother and help nurse her back to health. However, Shmi tells Anakin to go, and that he'll be doing the right thing by saving his friend. Revan also wants to come, and he tells Anakin that he'll be right behind them in his Delta 7A class Jedi Interceptor. So the group departs after Anakin says goodbye to his mother, and they rendezvous in the airspace of Geonosis. The next series of events plays out in a similar fashion to how it does in the movie. When the group tries to find Obi-Wan, they stumble across the massive droid factory under the surface of Geonosis. Following that, Anakin ends up trapped, and so does Padme. Revan, however, has started to gain his power back from before his slumber, especially after training as a Jedi for the past little while. He still dons his Mandalorian mask, and the man who is able to be a legitimate challenge to the eternal Sith Emperor is ready for action. Revan slaughters many of the Geonosians with his purple blade, and he uses massive bursts of force energy to rip apart many of the apparatuses that are building droids. He saves Anakin, who still loses use of his saber, for leaping towards Padme and saving her from the Geonosians and the droids that had captured her. For a moment, Jango is shocked to see a Jedi wearing a Mandalorian helmet, as he had come down himself to deal with Padme, but he continues to blast away at Revan. In response, Revan lets out a massive burst of Force lightning, incapacitating Jango in his Mandalorian armor and frying his jetpack, before Force jumping into the air and stabbing Jango through the chest, uttering a Mandoa curse to the esteemed bounty hunter before he dies. Revan extends his hand to Padme, and she takes it, in awe of the ancient Jedi's power. They meet back up with Anakin and R2 before using the Force to sense where Obi-Wan is being held captive. They're pursued by Geonosian guards, but Anakin and Revan are able to fend for themselves. At long last, they find Obi-Wan's cell, and Revan blasts through the door with a powerful Force punch. The group secures Obi-Wan, and they end up escaping the Geonosian catacombs with him in tow. 3 Jedi are a force to be reckoned with, and they manage to escape the hive before Dooku can apprehend them. On the way out, Revan, in his anger, decides that it would be prudent to truly show these puny Geonosian bugs his full power. Once again, the mind of Vitiate is still eating away at him. As they make their way through the droid factory, Revan uses the Force to obliterate many of the devices that are being used to fabricate these droids, along with bringing down significant chunks of the wall by using the Force. When Obi-Wan asks Revan if this is really necessary, he says that whoever dared to challenge him or his friends would feel the true power of the Force. Obi-Wan gives Anakin a sour look, indicating that he still doesn't trust Revan, and that he was clearly prone to unstable outbursts. Anakin looks back, starting to see his master's point of view after the incident with the Tusken Raiders on Tatooine. Revan single-handedly obliterates the droid factory as the Jedi escape. The group is pursued by vulture droids as they make their escape into space, but Anakin's superior piloting abilities allows him to evade. Revan gets into his hyperspace ring and jumps, leaving Geonosis behind. At this point, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Revan report their findings back to the Jedi Council. Because Obi-Wan is broken out of jail, there's no need for the Jedi to muster their strength and stage a rescue attempt. Instead, they chastise Anakin for his unsanctioned excursion to Tatooine and his little stunt on Geonosis. Revan is quick to hop to Anakin's defense, saying that sometimes the Council's views of the Force were constricting, and that young Jedi needed to explore in order to truly understand the Force and their place in the galaxy. Revan argues that these should be considered Anakin's Padawan trials, and that he had watched Anakin overcome battles with darkness within him. Anakin is out confused, wondering if Revan coming to Tatooine was all just a test of his strength against the dark side. Obi-Wan somewhat agrees, but he tells the Council that Revan shouldn't be allowed to encourage such rebellion. Yoda says to Anakin that they will accept Revan's tests as his trials, especially since they needed new commanders in the upcoming war. They now had an army, one that needed leaders. Promoting Anakin to the rank of Jedi Knight would allow him to be in charge of new troops. Because of the newfound intel from Obi-Wan about an organized separatist threat, the Jedi were given a mandate from the Senate to quickly squash the remaining droid factories on Geonosis. This gives Revan pause. Were the Jedi now working as a military force? For years, him and his acolytes had battled the Jedi Council on their lack of willingness to interfere in the Mandalorian Wars that had resulted in so many deaths. Now, suddenly, at the whim of the Senate, they were willing to go into battle? Perhaps the order had changed. Anakin has his promotion ceremony, and his Padawan braid is cut. The new army, along with the newly procured Venator starships, begin to amass on Coruscant, ready to attack Geonosis and hopefully apprehend Dooku if he was still on the planet. When the Jedi do attack the planet, it catches the Separatists off guard. While the Republic wins the battle and ends up taking some prominent Separatist leaders into their custody, they still fail to capture Dooku, along with being unable to capture many of the Separatists who sit on the corporate council. As a result, the Clone Wars continue to rage across the galaxy. Palpatine still pulls the strings in the background, and Revan still attempts to mold Anakin into his ideal apprentice. However, as the Clone Wars continue on, Revan starts to realize something. All those years ago, when he had been the Revenants leading his faction into battle against the Mandalorians, he had done it for the betterment of the galaxy. He didn't seek personal gain from it. In fact, many in the Order believed him to be a heretic to their ways at the time. As Revan becomes a prominent military leader during the Clone Wars, he starts to connect with the soldiers under his command, and he sympathizes with them, like many of the other Jedi could not. He sees them as people, and he wants to protect them from harm's way. Revan's tactics become renowned throughout the Grand Army of the Republic for being bold, yet also keeping in mind the lives of his men. Revan and Anakin have very similar styles of command, and they often go on missions together. Anakin's devotion to the Republic, to Obi-Wan, to his new Padawan Ahsoka Tano, and to his wife Padme begin to rub off on Revan as well. Once again, his new camaraderie with the clones and his favorite Jedi begin to pull him closer to the light, just like his love for Bastila had, and he is able to fight back against Vitia's pull on his mind. Despite this, he still has a deep hatred for the Order as a whole, especially after realizing the Council's goals in this war weren't about helping the common man. Instead, they were fighting for the interests of a corrupt Senate, and they still couldn't seem to see that the leader of their republic was actually a Sith Lord. That alone was enough to prompt Revan to continue working alongside Palpatine, sowing seeds for the destruction of the Jedi. Revan still also wanted to kill Palpatine if he didn't join him in the future. When Ahsoka is accused of the bombing of the Jedi Temple, Revan is furious. As a member of the Council, he stands up for her, stating that clearly this is just the Jedi Council trying to find a fall person to report back to the Senate for. His concerns also prompts the normally quiet Plo Koon to speak up, stating that he believes that little Ahsoka was incapable of such treachery. Surely they could sense no deceit in the young Padawan. Obi-Wan also speaks up in favor of Ahsoka, but a majority of the members don't budge. Yoda, while sympathetic, still says that there isn't enough evidence to pardon her, and that Tarkin is a relentless prosecutor. Once again, despite his new light side inclinations, Revan is still determined to upend this order and begin fresh, especially after seeing how they couldn't even take care of their most loyal members. Ahsoka, despite hearing about how there had been more people defending her in this story, still decides that the best course of action would be for her to leave the Jedi Order and find her own path. Revan keeps this in mind, and he tells Ahsoka that if she ever needs anything in the future, he would be there for her. As the Clone Wars start to come to a climax, Palpatine's plan begins to be fulfilled. Anakin still kills Dooku at the behest of Palpatine, especially since now he had also some influence from Revan about his version of justice through violence. Obi-Wan goes to Utapau and defeats Grievous, and Anakin is still sidelined by the Jedi Council. Despite Anakin's mother remaining alive, Palpatine still twists Anakin's mind, and Anakin receives the continuous stream of nightmares about Padme's death. He remembers his promise to stay true to who he is, so when Palpatine admits to Anakin that he's actually Sidious, he goes and tells the Council. This time, Mace requests Revan's help, as he is stationed at the Jedi Temple during the time of Revenge of the Sith after a successful campaign in the Outer Rim sieges for debriefings with the Council. Revan sees this as a fantastic opportunity. He would be able to take out two birds with one stone, Mace Windu and Darth Sidious, if he refused to join. Soon, he would be able to fulfill his own plan for the galaxy and finally establish a competitive sect of Force users. Revan goes with Mace, ready for battle. Soon, the fate of the galaxy would be decided. Hey folks, if you're enjoying this story, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications as we update this channel weekly with new What If content. Now, back to the story. Mace Windu enters Palpatine's office alongside Kit Fisto, Sassy Tin, and Egan Kolar. This time, however, Revan also goes with the group. The altercation begins similar to how the attempt to usurp Palpatine does in Revenge of the Sith. Palpatine quickly disposes of Kit Fisto, Tin, and Kolar. However, with Revan and Windu, the Sith Master puts on a better show. For the purpose of this story, we'll continue with the interpretation of this duel in which Palpatine is holding back against Windu in order to tempt Anakin to the dark side, pushing him over the edge with Mace's hypocrisy. Windu is still strong, though, and he still uses the pod to provide a legitimate challenge to the Sith Lord. Revan, who wears his mask for this duel, also puts on a show. He duels with skill, but he holds back, knowing that this is part of Palpatine's plan. When Mace subdues the Sith Master, Revan continues to hold back, keeping his lightsaber to his side. It's in this moment that Anakin bursts in, believing that he needs Palpatine in order to save his wife. They go through the same dialogue, and Anakin sees Mace's devotion to dogma over the legal process for the Chancellor. However, in this situation, it isn't Anakin that throws Mace out the window. It's Revan. Revan lifts his hand and he puts Mace into a force choke. The Jedi Master isn't expecting this, and he is immediately clawing at his throat, dropping his lightsaber to the floor. Revan tells Mace that he's been waiting for this moment for years, and that now he had the chance to finally rid the galaxy of the Jedi Council's dedication to outdated dogma and a corrupt Senate that cost the lives of millions across the galaxy, including his clone men. Revan comes face to face with Mace, whose eyes are bulging out of his head, and says that he's never liked the uptight master. Mace grunts at Revan stubbornly before Revan throws him out the window. Anakin stares at Revan, stunned, before managing to ask if Revan is a Sith like Palpatine. Revan turns to Anakin and tells him that he bore allegiance neither to the Jedi nor the Sith, and that both ideologies were unsustainable and flawed. Neither embraced the true power of the Force, which he had found. Sidious looks at Revan, confused, and attempts to make the man pay for his treachery. As Revan had predicted earlier, Sidious did not join him. Sidious blasts a stream of force lightning at Revan, which Revan merely raises his hand to absorb without a second glance, as Yoda does during the prequels, but Revan does it with much more ease. Once again, Revan asks Anakin to join him, and together they could finally put an end to the endless feud between the Jedi and the Sith that had caused the galaxy so much harm over the centuries. Revan also tells Anakin that Palpatine had told him all of the secrets about finding eternal life, just like Plagueis had done with his apprentice, anticipating that Revan would rule by his side, and that he could help Anakin save Padme just as easily as Sidious could. After all, he had survived millennia with the aid of carbonite technology, and now he was a master of the Force, unlike anyone who had been seen throughout the history of the galaxy. Anakin is conflicted, as two of his mentor figures were now here, battling one another for dominance. In that instant, Anakin remembers his mother's words to stay true to himself. Revan, despite being flawed, still had a significant amount of good within him. He wanted what was best for the galaxy, and while his methods may have sometimes been twisted, it wasn't exactly his fault. He was still possessed by part of the spirit of a long-dead Sith Emperor, and because of that, despite that, he still managed to control his emotions well. Sidious, on the other hand, only wanted to consolidate power for himself. Anakin now saw through all of the lies and manipulation that Palpatine had told him over the years, and he becomes angry. He knows that Revan will treat him as an equal, and together they could build a new sect of Force users that truly worked for the good of the galaxy, rather than furthering the old doctrine and politics of the Jedi Order. Anakin looks directly into Palpatine's eyes, and he feels a rush of anger towards the Chancellor. Perhaps this was one case where Revan's form of justice needed to be served. In a moment of rage, Anakin lets out a guttural yell and ignites his lightsaber, running towards the Sith Lord. Palpatine shoots a barrage of force lightning at Anakin, turning his attention to the young Jedi, but Revan deflects it away from him. In this moment, Anakin slices off Palpatine's hands and looks the Sith Lord dead in the eyes, then glances at Revan. He tells Revan that he would be no better than Mace Windu if they didn't provide the Chancellor with a fair trial, and the Jedi shouldn't have jurisdiction in political affairs. Revan, who for a moment considers killing Palpatine there and then, actually nods in agreement with Anakin, once again displaying control of his emotions and stating that he agreed with the young Jedi. Revan turns off his lightsaber before calling in the Coruscant security forces to apprehend Palpatine. Anakin keeps his lightsaber to Palpatine's throat as they enter the office, and as they drag Palpatine away, he yells that this wouldn't be the last time that Revan and Anakin would see him. Revan reaches out his hand towards Anakin, and the two embrace each other as equals. With the Chancellor apprehended and Order 66 averted, the rest of the Jedi still remain in the galaxy. The Separatists continue to advance their offensives, and the clones continue to fight back. With Palpatine in custody, Mon Mothma is elected to be the interim Chancellor, given her charismatic speaking skills and continued outspokenness against the militarization of the Republic. As it becomes clear that the war is mounting significant costs to the Republic, she uses her executive powers to establish negotiations with separatist leaders about peaceful secession from the Republic. While many Republic nationalists decry this act, citing it as an abuse of wartime power, a majority of senators have become fatigued by the war, especially given information gathered by Republic intelligence about strange absences in accounting with regards to clone contracts, along with many suspicious holocalls and diverted funds that were authorized directly by Palpatine. It becomes clear to many that he was simply using the war to consolidate power for himself. In addition, due to the revelation that he is a Sith Lord, many of his prosecutors are secretly prejudiced against him in his trial due to the history of the Sith within the galaxy. Palpatine is charged with treason and he is sentenced to a lifetime in Republic prison. At this time, many Palpatine supporters and Republic nationalists begin to organize and violently protest Mon Mothma's attempts to return the galaxy to normalcy, but the clones are quick to apprehend these radicals. Speaking of the clones, Mon Mothma's administration puts forward bills in the Senate that are passed regarding clone welfare, granting them full citizenship and pensions upon their release from the Grand Army of the Republic, due to their service to the galaxy. Meanwhile, Anakin and Revan face massive consequences for their actions in the Chancellor's office. Because of their use of the dark side and because Revan had killed a fellow Jedi Master, both of them are banished. Yoda expresses extreme disappointment in the two of them, stating that he actually thought that Anakin could really be the chosen one. To this, Anakin responds with the fact that perhaps he was, but the Jedi had misinterpreted the prophecy. After all, he had just helped kill a Sith Lord. The Council votes to expel the two from the Order, but the Republic does not press charges against them due to their part in defeating the Chancellor and ousting him as a Sith Lord. Revan and Anakin are widely perceived as heroes by the greater galaxy, except by those who are Jedi or Palpatine loyalists. Before Anakin and Revan begin their journey of building a new order of Force users, they go see Padme as she gives birth to the twins, Luke and Leia. Also in attendance is Obi-Wan, who tells Anakin that while he believes his actions to be wrong, he wishes to remain in contact with him. Anakin had helped defeat a Sith Lord, after all. During the Clone Wars, Revan and Obi-Wan had also developed a close relationship, despite Obi-Wan's mistrust of him initially. So they remain close friends. Obi-Wan, however, is too devoted to the Jedi Code to leave the Order. As Anakin and Revan begin to build a new temple for their Order on Naboo near Padme's residence, many disenfranchised Jedi who agree with their teachings leave the Order to join the two. Anakin is able to be close to his wife, who he no longer has to keep secret to the galaxy, and helps in the upbringing of his children. Shmi, who remains alive after the death of Klieg Lars, is also brought to Naboo to live with Padme and help raise Luke and Leia to be as principled as their father and their mother. How do these events all tie together for a conclusion? Let's find out. With Palpatine behind bars, the view of the Jedi slightly shaken, and the Republic and Separatists now coexisting as separate governments, a time of relative peace seems to dawn on the galaxy. Revan remains a troubled man, but with the help of Anakin, he begins to research how to rid himself of Vitiate's influence. Anakin learns to use his love for his family to remain grounded in the light, but he still taps into the dark side as a tool to achieve necessary ends and occasionally administer justice. Him and Revan head this new faction of Force users, which seems to compete with the Jedi. They are allowed to have attachments, explore all aspects of the Force, and are not plucked from their families as children. All of their members are willingly recruited at a suitable age. Tensions begin to rise between the two, but they maintain a shaky peace due to Revan and Anakin's solid public perception as heroes of the Clone Wars. Padme continues to serve in the Senate, and Mon Mothma even begins to train her to be an eventual successor to the position of Supreme Chancellor. Everything seems to be going well. However, one day, from the depths of the unknown regions comes a call to Anakin and Revan from Ahsoka Tano. She tells Revan that she's acting on his call back to when she left the Order to let him know if she ever needed help. Now, she needed it. She tells them that she's journeyed to the unknown regions in order to help explore the Force and her place in the galaxy. And she also says that there is craziness out there, and she needs their help. She details her discoveries of strange societies, such as the Chiths and the Grisks, that are planning to make moves towards the Republic. Tensions are rising, and soon, conflicts from the edge of the galaxy would arrive. Or will Revan and Anakin Skywalker be ready to handle this threat alongside Ahsoka? Will they be able to work with the Jedi to once again protect the galaxy? And how will the demilitarized Republic deal with this incoming threat? Will they have to work with the Separatists, or will they continue to bash heads about their visions for the galaxy? Well, all will be revealed in Part 2 that will be coming soon. Hello there, Star Wars fans. I hope that you enjoyed this What If timeline. It was a blast to write. If you did, please consider clicking on this other video, What If Maul Trained as a Jedi? Have a fantastic day, everyone, and as always, I hope that you've gotten your daily nutritional dose of Bantha Stew.